Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of your faithful trip. It started in the firmament, and then we all got tricked. Life was great when we were young, with all the things we believed. Then it all got hard, unbearable, and we know we're being deceived. Forgotten, ignored, secret, and hidden. Topics that talk about how water is knowledge. Now drink from the fountain. Let's pour some on you now. Billions of Christians believed Christ was crucified, buried, and then rose again. This is the basis for Christian faith. What if Jesus survived the crucifixion? Would this be pure blasphemy? Or is there reason behind this assumption? There is evidence in the Gospels themselves that say Christ may have survived the crucifixion, and that the crucifixion, to put it bluntly, was a fraud. Writer and researcher Michael Baigent, author of Holy Blood-Holy Grail, and other scholars believe that the Gospels are suspect to the theory of the survival of Christ. He says his theories are not intended to offend, but one must keep a clear distinction between the Jesus of history and the Jesus of theology, even though the Jesus of theology is based on the historical Jesus. One can only find the figure of the Jesus of history by teasing out of various historical documents, which some are the New Testament. In the theory of the survival of Jesus, there are a number of clues which help support it, but there are two major clues that are the strongest. First is the crucifixion itself. When a person was crucified, they did not die quickly, but rather a slow, painful, morbid death, which would have taken 2 to 3 days, possibly even a week. Jesus supposedly died within 2 to 3 hours. I always thought it was 3.5 hours max, personally. Still, same for me. Joseph of Arimathea, also known as Josephus, went to Pilate and asked to have the body of Jesus, which was contrary to Roman law anyway. And when Pilate heard that Jesus was already dead, he was so surprised to hear that Jesus had died so quickly that he sent a centurion to check. The second oddity is that the crucifixion took place in what seemed to be a private garden and tomb owned by Joseph of Arimathea. The importance of this observation is that if there was any fraudulence associated with the crucifixion, then the public could be swept away in a private garden, and Jesus could be privately taken away, revived, tendered, and ministered to. If Jesus did not die on the cross, he would have been forced to flee the Holy Land. If authorities discovered Jesus was still alive, he would have been punished again. So where would he have gone? There is a story of Christ's life after the crucifixion, that the blood relatives of Jesus may still live among us. Rennes-le-Château is at the foot of the Pyrenees Mountains in the south of France. This small town is at the center of a religious and historical cyclone. The story begins with a young parish priest by the name of Béranger Saunier. Béranger Saunier was first assigned to Rennes-le-Château in 1885 at the age of 33. He started renovations of the church and found a suspicious hollow piece in the altar, maybe that meant hollow, when taking it apart. Within the hollow piece he found 4 parchments, which started the mystery. 2 of the parchments were written in code, which he could not decipher. Saunier took the parchments to Paris to seek help from experts in military code and ciphers. It is believed that he found the key to unlocking the mystery of the documents. It is also believed that someone gave Saunier money to find out what information was obtained in the parchments, or perhaps to keep the secrets of Rennes-le-Château from becoming public. When Béranger Saunier went home, he started a full renovation of the church. They keep repeating his name, so I have to pronounce it over and over again. And I'm not good at that. He found new details within the church's artwork that he thought to be clues to the information contained in the parchments. Is it possible that the coded documents revealed to Béranger Saunier that Christ had survived the crucifixion? In a depiction of a stage 14 of the cross, that's this one you see to the right here, which is normally the body of Christ being carried to the tomb, Saunier showed the moon was already risen. Thus, Passover had already begun. No Jew would handle a dead body after the beginning of Passover. Good point. Either Saunier was showing that the body was not dead, or they were taking the body out of the tomb and not in. After renovating the church, Saunier still had some, let's just call him Bob, still had some money left over, so he continued in Rennes-le-Château and built a house, garden, and a tower, which he named after Mary Magdalene. The theory of Mary Magdalene may prove key to historical legends that Mary Magdalene traveled to the south of France. In addition, some scholars believe she may have been the wife of Jesus. A number of documents spoke of relationships between Mary Magdalene and Jesus, which could only be described as close. For example, it was witnessed that Jesus kissed her often on the lips, to the point where the other disciples complained. Perhaps they felt jealous. Jesus was a religious teacher. It was very unusual for a Jewish religious teacher to be unmarried. In fact, a commandment of God was to be fruitful and multiply. The question arose that could possibly be so important about this relationship. What could cause such a mystery? Michael Baigent believes two stories converge here. Could the Holy Grail, the elusive treasure of legend and myth, be the key to unlocking this mystery? It would seem unrelated to Jesus and Mary, but may be the most important clue of all. The Holy Grail was thought of as the chalice Christ drank from at the Last Supper, and which may have held his blood after the crucifixion. But could the Holy Grail have another meaning? A meaning hidden in the French words for Holy Grail, Saint Grail, Holy Grail. If broken differently, it can be broken into Sang Real, or royal blood, the royal bloodline. During research, historical proof was found that the line of David, Jesus' bloodline, existed in Europe during medieval times. According to Béranger Saunier, when the knights first find the Grail, he does not find the golden chalice, but proof that Jesus survived the crucifixion. In 1917, when Saunier was dying, he called for a priest to hear his confessions. When the priest did, he fled from the room in shock, never smiling again. Perhaps Saunier imparted in him a secret that has been suppressed for 2,000 years. A secret that Jesus had survived the crucifixion. A secret that Jesus had a relationship with Mary Magdalene. A relationship which produced children. And that these children made their way to France, where the bloodline of Christ, the bloodline of the royal line of David, continued, and in fact continues today. You're looking at the difference between the Jesus of theology and the Jesus of history. The Jesus of theology is a God. The Jesus of history is a man like all other men. We are trying to regain the Jesus of history, to find Jesus the man who walked, loved, and taught in Judah in the 1st century A.D. All right. This is from an article called "The Crucifixion Was a Fraud." Now it's on it's a humanist's website, recovered through the Wayback Machine, and it's translated from the Spanish version. And the bestseller is called New York Times bestseller, more revealing than any fiction, Holy Blood-Holy Grail. Okay. That's a good article. I've heard of that book. I haven't read the book, but I've studied this, and I even have some other things I want to add. There's not only what he cites, but also there's a tomb in India. Maybe Jesus did go to France with Mary Magdalene. Maybe they split up after a while. I don't know. Or maybe they moved to India, because he also has a home near Kashmir and Srinagar. Right now, this week, that's in the news with the unrest going on there. That town, Srinagar, is where there's a tomb for Jesus. It has footprints with nail marks in his feet, and he's actually buried in the east-west direction instead of the north-south direction that they would bury themselves in that town. So look into that. There's also clues of his travels throughout the Gujarat region, which is now modern day, I think, Afghanistan, Iraq, through Syria. He went through what we call the Himalayas, over to Tibet. He did that before he was 30. probably where he learned how to walk on water also. Another thing is when he met Mary Magdalene on the road right after his crucifixion, was it the road to Damascus, when he said, touch me not yet, for I have not yet ascended to my Father in heaven. Well, in context, that can also mean I'm still healing, don't, if you touch with me or get with me, I'm still, healing, and I haven't died yet, which means I have not yet ascended to my Father in heaven. So anyway, that's one other way. Another thing is the products that Joseph of Arimathea brought to the tomb. He brought myrrh, which I believe is an essential oil. And he brought herbs and essential oils to resuscitate someone that was still alive, not to bury. And the fact, like that painting showed, that they were handling the body after the moon had already risen on Passover. So, and I think just for those of you who don't accept this and it's very harsh and you're about to comment, let me tell you one thing to open your mind a little bit. Me being ex-Mormon, the way to look at this, like how could it be? Because of all these other things you can cite, right? Just you have to know that more of the Bible is false than you think, especially in the New Testament. Think about it in reality terms of today. We had a Bible for thousands of years in other forms, all the way back from the Torah, the Pentateuch, and then all the holy books, And then suddenly, about 320 AD, we get a New Testament for this new church of the Roman Emperor. I mean, come on. A lot of the stories in there, Paul, the book of John started first, and the other Gospels were edited and written from that one, but all the presbyters that were gathered for the Nicene Council, the Bishop of Alexandria was prominent. Why were all the other books in Alexandria burned? Why eventually were all the books burned in Berlin? I've been to that spot at the university in Berlin where the books were burned in that courtyard. I think things like this are in those books. It's complete control over mankind to make churches and make you believe in resurrection and that you have to pay for sins, okay? No matter who allegedly did it. But Christ actually taught other things like, ascend, and be as good as you can. You can see me and you can see the Father. But he didn't baptize anybody and he didn't create any churches. And they say his lineage went to southern France, which would be where my family's from. And my last name is French. French. It's not a pure French word, but it's a French origin. Let's see. I guess that's about it. I post a lot of videos about this topic. This is one of my, when you learn about that, maybe perhaps you've looked into the moon landings and you think if that was a hoax, if you've looked into any other things that are accused to be hoaxes, if you've looked into flat earth, as they call it, and then if you look into the crucifixion, that's the next step. That's the next big lie. It's not just flat earth. It's all of the beast anti-Christ system involves also the presentation of what we think we live on as spirits animating, incarnated in these, what we call our meat puppet suits, So thank you for coming to Plain Mundane Show. Please hit like, subscribe, ring that bell, and just wait until I put up another video. And I will see you guys when I can hit the stop button here.